Hi, it's Calder here from Singing Matters. It's nice to be back once again. I'm going to talk to you today about mimicking other singers and why we should be very careful when we go looking for someone else's voice. So this is a common thing, and it's one of the hardest lessons to learn. I spent a long time struggling with this. And if you sing covers for a job or as a hobby or just to learn, then you will find yourself running into this problem of mimicking other singers. It's not always a problem, but it really can be for the developing singer. It's impossible not to, isn't it? You know, you can't help but lean into those stylistic nuances that you hear on the song that you're trying to cover. It's really difficult not to do that. But I'm going to talk about what happens for the developing singer when they try to do this. So the big problem for a singer who is still working it all out, hasn't got their voice right yet, is still trying to develop their technique and their style and everything, what you think you hear is usually wrong. It's usually false, okay? The way a singer interprets what they are hearing is often fundamentally wrong. The sound you hear is usually achieved in almost a completely opposite way to what you think. And this is one of the annoying things that many students and many singers have worked out or are still trying to work out. There are so many contradictions and counterintuitive ideas when it comes to singing technique. For example, big, powerful high notes, they're actually small and narrow and they're thinned out and they're probably half the volume that you think they are. You know, that grit and rasp and distortion that you hear in a voice, it's often achieved in a very different way to what you think. You're not squeezing the absolute hell out of your whole throat and neck and putting so much air pressure through the chords that you're going to pop an eyeball out and burst a blood vessel trying to control it with your voice. It's the opposite. It's achieved through controlled and measured compression. And then on the other end of the scale, like the soft, breathy tones that you hear people sing with, perhaps Billie Eilish springs to mind. You hear all that beautiful, soft, airy tone, and you think like that. But singers like that actually have amazing breath control. They're just really good at allowing the chords to allow a bit of air through while they still control it. They're still controlling the air, but it sounds breathy. So you go with all this breath and you lose all your breath halfway through the line. These singers still have fantastic breath control where they can get to the end of the line, they can sustain long notes, they can sing long phrases without running out of air. And if you struggle with that and you're trying to sing with that soft sort of breathy tone, you have to learn how to control the breath, and you can still give it that style, but you're controlled at the same time. These singers can use any nuance they wish at any time. They can add a creaky fry and a bit of chord closure when they want, and then they can sing so they can let that air come through when they want to. Just doing it off the top of my head, and they're in complete control. Okay, so we often get it wrong when we try to mimic these things. And what happens then? Well, you can mess your voice up. You can create all kinds of bad habits. You can cause voice damage like I got when I had an operation 5 years ago. I absolutely destroyed my voice. As many of you who've seen my channel before will know, I sang with such unbelievable strain and tension. I also used my voice very badly outside of singing. I sang 4 gigs in 3 days and 6 gigs a week and 3 gigs a week and 5 gigs a week and just constant non-stop bad technique, trying to sound like someone, say Kelly Jones from Stereophonics, which is lesser known over in the States perhaps, but a very gravelly, gritty voice. You know, let's say, you know, anything from Rod Stewart or whatever to, you know, Chris Cornell or anyone like that who uses a bit of distortion. You're trying to sound like these singers and you do it in all the wrong ways. And I just applied so much tension to my voice. I've taught a lot of people, and I still think not many have quite the same levels of tension that I probably experienced. And plus I was doing a lot of singing. I was doing 2-hour shows all over the place, left, right and centre. And it took its toll to the point where my voice was actually permanently damaged. So let's go back to this. We can learn. Let's flip that on the other side. Of course, you can learn from listening to other singers. You can learn from what they are doing, but we have to be really careful as we do that. Because, as I said before, you often get it wrong, what you think you are hearing. And it takes a long time to train the voice to the point where you understand those details and those nuances. And it takes a long time to train the ear to recognize what you are hearing in another voice. Until you've experienced certain sensations yourself, it's just not there. It's not in your voice, and you will go with tension, you'll go with extrinsic grip and squeezing of the swallowing muscles, everything, tongue tension, everything around the larynx will start getting involved. You'll be pulling everything up in your throat. You'll be squeezing, gripping, adding all this weight and force. You'll be pushing so much air that the voice has no option other than to grip, because it's trying to control that air that is way too much. And you'll do it all with all this intensity that you just don't understand any other way. You can't find another way. So these are the problems that I came across. You can also, again, thinking of softer singers, you can wear your voice down. When you have a sore hoarse voice, you've had a cold or something, you lose your voice a little bit from illness. One of the best pieces of advice is don't whisper. Why would that be the case? Because the air, when people whisper and they try and make themselves heard loudly whispering, it's so abrasive. And my voice is very sensitive now, having had an operation and been through everything that it's been through. I can still perform. It's okay. It has its ups and downs. But if you go, I'm trying to not talk, and you do that, because you're vocalizing airflow instead of vocalizing the chords coming together and actually making a sound. You're vocalizing the air. You're pushing air through to try and, just use the air in your vocal tract to make sound and make words. It is so unhealthy for the voice. So you don't whisper, but imagine singing with a soft, breathy voice for 2 hours. And what that does to the voice, it just wears it out and swells it up, and it feels so horrible afterwards. So this is the thing. We do crazy things in an attempt to sound like someone we want to sound like. But as with everything, you don't know what you don't know. And your perception of sensations is all out of whack. Your perception of what you hear is all out of whack. And we need to bring those two things together. And it kind of takes time to get there. But just try and trust the idea that what you hear is not as crazily intense as it might appear. And often when people look intense, they're controlling things. And that's why they look so intense, because they're controlling it and balancing it to make it work and come out how you want it to come out. They're not forcing it through. There's an amount of oomph behind things with support and closure, but you are never forcing it and fighting against the voice. And so many people do. So many people do in an attempt to sound like something they want to sound like. So what do we need to do instead? Well, we need to kind of understand how to build technique based on sensation, based on what we can feel in our own voice, to the point where we have a detailed, nuanced idea of what is heavy and what is light in your own voice, so that when you're trying to do these sounds, you do it within those parameters. We have to know what is comfortable, okay? And a way to do that is, firstly, get some lessons, learn everything you can about the voice. Trust that this crazy information that seems just hard to get your head around, I know, because I was there as well. Trust me, I understand. Try to trust it. Try to trust what people are saying, because the next coach you go to and the next video you watch will tell you something very similar. I know there are times when it feels like coaches are contradicting themselves, and there's a reason for all that. There's a lot of that in the vocal world, and they're all right. Everyone's right to some extent about different things. Depends what they're talking about. It can seem very confusing, but just that's why it's such an important journey, and it's such an important study to go into. Watch coaches talk about how singers are achieving their sound. And when you hear a coach try and demonstrate it, you hear it in someone else's voice, which is the same thing as watching people do covers, other people singing the same song. See if you can find someone doing a cover that you think that, they're going for the same style, and you hear the same tone in someone else's voice. That can be a really interesting thing. But likewise, listen to the actual singer do it live. Don't just rely on studio recordings. I talked about this before. You have all the compression, reverb, and production, doubling of vocals, everything going on a record that makes it sound what it sounds like. If you watch the singer themselves do it live, you might get a better idea of how they're actually doing it. You might see and hear it completely differently because it's just one voice on stage with a microphone. And that can be a really interesting insight. But also watch other people singing it as well. And look at the expression on their faces. It's not always clear. Like I said a minute ago, sometimes people look really intense when they're just actually trying to control things. But watch for how easy some people might appear when they're singing live. Often you'll see, God, they make that look easy. Why do they look like it's just flying out of them? Because it is, because they've controlled everything and learned how to balance their voice. They've learned how to keep the larynx nice and stable and neutral. They've learned how to use the right amount of airflow. They've learned how to get this tiny detailed bit of chord closure or not whenever they want. And what is a heavy sound is so much lighter than you could ever believe, those who sing with strain and tension. You have to try and trust that there's so much truth in that and keep asking yourself to believe that concept more and more. And even when you've gone a little bit down that line, keep trying to look further and deeper into it because there's probably further you can go. So I've mentioned it before. It might have been on my music channel and not my singing lesson channel, but I've been singing covers for 20 years or more, and you do 25 different singers in a night. You do 30 singers in a night. You do 30 different voices in a night. And there are times when that really throws your voice all over the place. Again, I think there are people out there who do the covers game who just sing. They just sing like themselves. It's all they've ever been able to do. And there's strength in that. There's strength in being able to mimic people as well, but I lean on it too much. And then it throws my voice all over the place. And maybe I never knew how to find my own voice in those early days. And that's why I led to just doing what everyone does, which is copy the sound. You think that the song requires that voice for it to be delivered, so you go for that voice. And there's some sense in that. But isn't it amazing when people sound like whoever they are with their authentic voice singing any song? They always sound like themselves. I wasn't able to do that so well. So when you're throwing yourself from one thing to another, you go from something like Kings of Leon to Sting and the Police, Sam Fender to whatever else, something more gritty. There are certain times in a set where I will say I need to move these songs apart. I simply really struggle to go from that or a few songs of that ilk into this. I just can't. It takes all sorts of adjustments, and there are certain songs in the set where I have to think about how I'm going to sing. I have to approach them. I have to be ready to sing with the right technique to hit certain songs well. And there are times when I've just gone, I'm going, oh my God, I can't find this place right now. I can't find this tone. I can't find this delivery right now. And I've had to say to the band, we need to move these songs as far away from each other as possible, please. I simply can't go from that to that. It was stuff like Sex on Fire to Message in a Bottle by the Police. And, Sex on Fire's got a big G sharp in it. I don't know what the notes are in Message in a Bottle, but it's a high, thin, small voice. And for some reason, I just stylistically really struggle when those two songs are next to each other. So we have to think about that. And obviously the ultimate goal is to sound like yourself and to sound authentic and just sing everything through your own voice. Yeah, maybe it's nice to have a range of styles and a few different things you can do. And maybe that's why I've done well at covers. Maybe that's why I can coach, because I can apply different things to my voice now. But I think ultimately I'd rather be an artist than any of those things. There's no doubt. So it's taken me a long time to find that in my own voice. And yeah, I'd rather be an authentic artist than anything else in music. And of course I am everything else but that, often, most of the time. So yeah, I want you to consider how you are approaching covering songs, what it is that you are doing. And if anything feels uncomfortable, intense, like hard to control, it's wrong. It's probably wrong. And I want you to take all the tips there. Watch people live. Watch other people covering it. Look at the ease from which they approach these songs. And ask yourself, it's not just them. What can I do to get myself closer to that? Because when you start to hear your own voice singing with a similar technique, you start to realize that it's as much about technique as it is their unique sound. And while ever you try and go for their unique sound, you may be approaching it wrongly. So we've got to go for sensation first, ease of delivery, ease of voice production, comfort and balance. And from that, we can add stylistic effects that start to lean into those kinds of sounds, but with our own voice doing it. And when you hear your own voice sounding a bit like that, because you're applying the same kind of technique and style, you start to hear, that's what I'm looking for. That's me doing it. That's me doing that song, not me trying to sound like them. And there's a difference. So that's my lesson for today. Just a quick one to consider what it is that you are doing and how much you bend your voice out of shape when you go from one song to another, and how much when you approach a cover song, you are doing it differently to perhaps the last song you sang because of their sound, how much you are aiming for their sound. And I'll say, once again, don't go looking for someone else's voice. Let's just go finding yours. All right? I'm available for lessons online. It's nice to get back. Hopefully you'll see some videos of me coming up soon. Thank you very much. And as ever, the best of luck with your singing. Cheers.